Hey there, welcome to Slurve. I'm Steve. This is Cash Game Cornerstones for MLB, June 1st. All right, it is a Wednesday. Let's get cracking. Pitching wise, today we've got some weird things going on, I'd say. First of all, just in case you hadn't seen, King Felix has been sent to the DL. Do not play him. I'm sure it'll be all over the sites and stuff, but don't plan on him. Paxton is starting in his place, but he's not in either of the player pools, which is pretty annoying. But we make do, we move on. And on that note, we do have Max Scherzer up against the Phillies today. Phillies are always a great matchup since their offense sucks. Scherzer's pretty expensive on DK, 13.2. But I think it's pretty doable today. At 10.7 on FanDuel, I would lock him in, no questions. But then there's also Lester against the Dodgers. The Dodgers can be formidable, as we found out by playing Arrieta yesterday, although hopefully most of you got off of him with the weather. That's what happened to me. Ended up not going so well for him. I mean, he's still an excellent pitcher, but that didn't happen. But I like Lester against the Dodgers still, and so does Vegas, although Vegas led me down some horrible paths last night with reverse line movement. But at 9.9 on DK, it's a sizable discount over Scherzer. So you have to be pretty sure that Scherzer is going to crush Lester's score to make it worthwhile to pay up that extra $3K and a bit. On FanDuel, he's 10.6. I would just go with Scherzer there. So we need a second pitcher since you maybe can't afford Scherzer and Lester. I certainly don't hate it if that's the case. But needing a second pitcher, I got a guy who, this is a won't kill you kind of play. I think he's a relatively high floor, pretty low ceiling guy. Aaron Sanchez against the Yankees. He had a pretty decent game against the Yankees a month or so ago, but he's been pitching even better since then. And the Yankees have just not been good. But they don't strike out a whole ton either. 8.5 on DK, he's certainly playable as a SP2 there. 8.6 on FanDuel, just don't even go there. And then the last guy, man, it's weird to recommend a guy like this in cash. I'm recommending a punt pitcher for cash. Yes, I know. I'm a little bit insane on this one, but I think it works, honestly, especially if you want to play Scherzer on DK and still get some of the bats, because we got Coors Field on the slate, and we'll get into that in a second. But we got this guy, Suarez, whose first name I've already forgotten since I didn't write it down. I should have done that. Alberto, I think. There we go. Or Albert Suarez. As you might have guessed, he doesn't have a whole lot of Major League experience. 12 innings pitched this year in relief. But he is facing Atlanta, and he is 4K on DK, which is cheaper than many of the Coors Field players we will be looking at as batters. And so basically, if Suarez gets in the positives at all, it's a win of a play. And I think he certainly can against Atlanta. One of those horrible Vegas leads I followed was Atlanta's run total crept up 0.7, which is huge. And it was a reverse line movement because the money was on the other team. I forgot. Anyway, so I went with a lot of Atlanta last night, and it did not go well for me. And let me just recommend against playing anybody from Atlanta, almost always. But I like Suarez's chances to put up a decent game. If we get 10, 12 points there, man, we are golden. Obviously, don't consider him on FanDuel. He's more expensive, and we don't need that. So the Rockies kind of exploded yesterday for 17 runs. It was not a football score. It was just crazy. But the Reds are still in a good place, too, although, again, today the Rockies have the better pitching matchup against John Lamb, who's just not very good. But I still like Tucker Barnhart as he's the cheapest way to get Coors Field exposure. Chatwood is a better pitcher than Lamb, but he's not elite, and he's in Coors Field, so that sets him up as a potential target. especially at 2.5 on DK. 2.8 on FanDuel, forget it. I like these other guys better. Either Blake Sweetheart, who I like him on DK too. He's 3.5, going up against Mike Wright, a guy I love to target. 2.7 on FanDuel, great price there. Dustin Garneau gets the aforementioned John Lamb, 2.9 on DK, so a nice midpoint price there, and 2.7 on FanDuel, so same price. You got to decide if you want a piece of the red-hot Red Sox offense in Sweetheart, assuming he gets the start. Make sure you check that out. Or if you want to go Coors Field with one of the other guys. Speaking of red-hot Red Sox, nobody has been as hot lately as David Ortiz, who is having one hell of a farewell tour. It's kind of like the antithesis of Kobe's farewell tour. And he gets the Mike Wright, one of my favorite guys to target. He is expensive as hell, but paying up at first base is probably a good idea. Always, but definitely today. 5.5 on DK, 4.9 on FanDuel. I like him on both sites. Also, we got Coors Field. Joey Votto's price has come up a little bit, but 4.7 on DK, 4.0 on FanDuel. Definitely have him in play. Also, Mark Reynolds, assuming he gets in the lineup. He didn't start yesterday. Against the bad lefty, 4.4 on DK. His price is up to 3.6 on FanDuel. One of those guys, is definitely a good option. You got options on both sides of the field for Coors, and David Ortiz is never a bad option if you can get him in there. I probably could have shortened this video by just saying play guys in Coors Field. It's just one of the best setups today, and there aren't that many that I like more or equally. But one that I am pretty interested in, and might go a little bit under the radar, is Houston, and specifically here, Jose Altuve against Robbie Ray, who's not terrible, but not really good either. And he's much worse versus righties. Altuve is, again, like Ortiz, really expensive, but deservedly so on DK at 5.0. On FanDuel at 4.0, really cheap. I like him a lot there. There's also Coors Field to consider, and we got LeMahieu against Lamb, 3.9 on DK, so a significant discount over Altuve. I would definitely lean that way. At this point, I haven't started making rosters yet. 3.5 on FanDuel, so pretty equivalent pricing. And Brandon Phillips, if he gets back in the lineup, he is one hell of a power hitter that you don't often see that too much at second base, and Coors Field could be what he needs to get back on the old homer track that he was on, a few weeks ago. 3.6 on DK and 3.3 on FanDuel, the cheapest option on both, with the price on DK a bit more attractive there. So at third base today, I really don't see a reason to play anyone other than Arenado in cash. He crushed it yesterday, 2 home runs. Gets a bad lefty today. Although there's a slight reverse splits thing going on lately, but nothing to worry about. Lamb not imposing. Arenado's price has somehow gone down $800 since yesterday, so he's 4.5 on DK. On FanDuel, he's 4.4, so relatively more expensive, but I still like him a lot there. I don't think there's much reason to consider other guys, but if you absolutely have to get away from Coors Field, or if the weather that is somewhat threatening in Coors, not terribly, but a little, if it gets worse, consider Travis Shaw. Another way to get part of that Red Sox thing. He's also first base eligible on DK, but no. And he's only 3.9 on FanDuel, so a nice little discount there. 4.2 on DK, only worth considering there if the Rockies game isn't going to play. Longoria against Duffy is really cheap on FanDuel at 3.5. He's 4.8 on DK, just completely forget about it, even if the Rockies don't play. But if they don't, if the Rockies game isn't going to play, it's going to be postponed, which is unlikely. I'm just throwing that out there. Then Longoria is definitely worth consideration. Hey, guess what? I got some guys at Coors Field to recommend you. Seriously, though, Zach Cozart, his price on DK just doesn't come up. I don't know what it is about him in the algorithm that it doesn't like. But going up against Chatwood, 3.7 on DK, 4.0 on FanDuel, so I'm not terribly interested in him there. especially since we got another guy named Trevor Story for only 4.2 on FanDuel. That's just silly. I think I'll be locking him in there. Story is 5.2 on DK. There's nothing wrong with him there. You know, I mean, he crushes lefties, and he's at home. But 5.2 is a lot to pay, and if you're paying up for Ortiz or for Altuve or whatever, that's kind of tough. Especially when on DK you got tempting guys like Carlos Correa against Ray for 3.6. He's 4.0 on FanDuel. I mean, whenever you see it more on FanDuel than on DK, you know something's up. I don't know what's up with that pricing, and sometimes DK is good with their price traps. But that being said, that's a price that you cannot ignore Carlos Correa at. I promise I have a few outfield plays that aren't in Coors Field. But first, the Coors Field ones. Duvall and Bruce are both in very good spots there. Duvall is a bit of a reverse splits hitter, and Bruce is lefty on righty, so they both have a good matchup there. And they're both expensive. 4.7 on DK for Duvall, 4.6 for Bruce, 4.1 on FanDuel for both of them. It's a bit of a coin toss. I don't mind playing both either. Nor do I mind any of the Rockies outfielders, but they're just more expensive, with the exception of Ryan Rayburn, assuming he gets in the lineup, which I believe he will versus a lefty, who's only 3.6 on DK and 3.2 on FanDuel. Hell of a deal in both places. Love him, assuming he makes the lineup. And then we got, I told you I'd get out of Coors Field a little bit. We got Hyun-Soo Kim versus Joe Kelly, who's also not good. And he's 3.6 on DK. It's a little bit pricey. Kim has been doing really well, though. He's batting near the top of the order, been hitting in the 2-hole. He's only 2.5 on FanDuel. Love that price. But then there's also Houston. I'm a fan of these Houston guys today. Especially on FanDuel, I love Springer. 3.8 on FanDuel. He's 4.5 on DK, which is just kind of rough, kind of hard to swing, but he's still a good play there. I would just probably go something cheaper, like maybe Evan Gattis. It's a little bit rough of a play, but I think in this situation it can be merited. 3.5 on DK. He's 3.3 on FanDuel, but he's a catcher. I don't totally hate him there. I would probably not play him unless I'm playing some other Astros, like at least a 2 or 3 man sort of stack in there, especially when you got Ryan Rayburn for 3.6. But if you're already playing Rayburn and you need another cheap guy, Gattis is a decent way to go, especially if you throw in Altuve or Correa or some of the other guys. Maybe, but probably not. So that's been your Cash Game Cornerstones for today, June 1st. I am Steve. This is Slurve. Come on by the Slurve tailgate, slurve.com. It's free to sign up. You can come chat with me, Adam, Max, and the rest of the crew. Get our ideas and updates as the day goes on. I know I, for one, am about to dive into some more research now. So I will have any updates on what I find there in the Slurve tailgate. And good luck tonight, guys.